Hey, Hardin County, it's Michelle Labus, and I had a question on Facebook about homeowners' responsibility for paying for the Westler Root Addition project. I can tell you a little bit about what I've learned on how kind of these grants work. There's maybe other ways. Different grants have different stipulations, and so we'll kind of cover all that. There's, I'm sure, things that I'm missing, but it was long enough that I didn't want to type it, and I thought everybody should kind of be in the conversation. So what we have is a revolving loan it's administered through the Ohio EPA, and they can have like 0 to 1% interest loans, or they can have principal forgiveness, which is your typical grant money, and it pays for a lot of it, or you're just paying the bare minimum on that interest. Your project has to rate high. So there's a whole matrix that they score these projects at, and then they go into a big pile, and the board, the OEPA board looks at them and they kind of rank them. And if you get into the top ranking, then of course you're going to be eligible for that 95% principal forgiveness. If you're not, then you're not going to get it. So there's, the hope is always that you are going to get the best deal, but the reality is that you don't. And so you always have to keep that in the back of your mind. Some ways that these are paid for. So let's say the commissioners go ahead, they're going to pay for I'm assuming, so they can pay for the study cash, which means they kind of own the study and they can apply for grants and stuff when they want, right? When they think they have the best shot at doing this. Otherwise, if you get a loan for the study in the engineering and those kinds of things, then you're going to be on the OEPA timeline, right? Because it's packaged into the loan. So I don't know what way the commissioners are going to decide to go on that. But if they go pay for themselves, it's kind of ours, and we can play around with it. So that's part of it. They would pay with that out of the general fund. There's not a sewer fund like a general sewer fund at the county. Now the package plants, the engineer's office does handle those, and so we had the 2 package plants that were upgraded with ARPA money, and Root Addition was not upgraded or didn't use ARPA money at that time because it was doing okay. And the engineers, the one with the commissioners, they decide on the amount that those houses are paying in for their sewer, which typically they're paying in the $30 or $40, which is what most people in the municipalities are paying for their systems. But generally, your municipality has to have maintenance costs built in, so that, I guess they don't really have replacement costs. They do have maintenance so that your sewer water plants aren't making money. And so these package plants aren't making money. They only have like $30,000 in the bank per sewage plant, package plant, which would go towards maintenance things, but not replacement costs. So these things can last like 60 years. And if you would have been putting in a little bit each year per user towards replacement costs, then the ARPA money in the county wouldn't have just paid the bill to get new ones put in. Well, now we're kind of looking at that same thing where Root Addition isn't paying in replacement costs, and if the system needs to be replaced or upgraded, they don't really have any money for that. And it's interesting because the county, if anybody in the county that is a multi-home entity, then the county's on the hook for it. If you're an individual person, then you kind of have your own sewer, but if you put a sewer line in somewhere, then people have to connect into it if you have to upgrade your sewers. So the county is definitely on the hook for the sewer problems in the county outside of municipalities. And so it's kind of an interesting thing that they're not preparing for any of these projects for the future because we just don't have a fund for it. So, and I don't think it wouldn't come out of like capital improvements. I don't know if they have an infrastructure fund. So anyways, county's on the hook, which is part of why the Luke has come to the commissioners to say, hey, we need to fix this problem, because that's what the EPA is going to say. So how does it come back on the homeowner? So we already know the homeowners don't have a substantial fund to bring money into the system to pay for upgrades. You're going to do it through rate increases. So a lot of times they'll do rate studies and say, okay, like Forrest doing a rate study, here's the number of houses, here's how much you are spending on your water sewer plans, this is how much you're charging, and if you're not charging enough to sustain it, then you have to raise your rates. A lot of times they'll tell you to raise it 3 or 5% over a long period of time, a little bit each year. But you have to have enough money to say that you can actually pay back this loan if you're going to get a loan. So increasing the rates, obviously, if the municipality or the county is going to use like general fund money, which is just regular tax money, they have to put it into a separate account to say, hey, we've moved this money specifically, as a guarantee for this loan. We have matches. So you may have to match 5% of what you're getting from a grant or a loan amount. And so there's kind of those things where you have to be able to put money up front to show that you're invested in the program. I think you can get multiple grants. I don't know how they layer multiple grants, but you can break things up into different phases where you say, here's phase 1, it's eligible for a $4 million grant. Phase 2 is now eligible for a $4 million grant, on and on. Or you break up a project and say, this portion is eligible, and then we can move kind of this infrastructure or this project onto another loan. So you kind of stack things and strategically move things around so that you can get the most money from the most entities to make a project happen, which is what we've seen a lot down at Kenton. They have multiple grants happening at the same time, which is kind of why they have timing issues, because all the grants have different start times and end times. You can have a special assessment where they're saying, for your road, we're going to assess the houses, $5 a month for, 10 years, and that's going to pay back the loan, so you can have those. They do that a lot with like sidewalk repair, where they say, okay, your sidewalk in front of your house is going to be $300 a year on your property tax, and then after 5 years, that amount is paid off. So those kinds of things. The other part is that so like at Myers Addition or even the houses out on Fairway, you're going to have the main like lateral put in, which would go down the street, and then the individual houses would pay privately to connect into it. So when they put the pipe in, they have tie-ins everywhere it needs to go. And sometimes if you have like a new sewer system that you just paid to put in, you're not going to have to tie in. You're only going to tie in once that sewer is defunct and you have to upgrade, like you can't upgrade or you can't make improvements, and so now that system's going to be old and done, and now you have to tie in. So they can do that kind of manipulation to it. So it's really unknown. A lot of it comes back to the contracts, right? The contracts, the stipulations of the grant money, first off, is what's going to tell you if you have to have a match, if you have to have, the loan, your rate study done. And so that's the first part of it. The second part of it is, how is the county going to expect their portion to be paid back, right? Especially if they put in this root addition and you have this big long pipe that's going into Kenton, that's outside of Kenton's jurisdiction, so that would be county. And so the expectation, I suppose, would be that the county would pay for that. And then a lot of times stuff like that is that the the entity doing it pays for the infrastructure, and then they grant that to the city of Kenton if the other people annex in, because then the city of Kenton will maintain it, right? So there's kind of the difference of like building infrastructure and maintaining infrastructure. And that's kind of how, I know this is long, but that's exactly how those package plants got into the county hands. So the investor comes in and they build the houses and they pay to put this infrastructure package plan in. And then you have to have a sanitarium person, which is Luke, he's the county guy, to check it. So you have to have that person overseeing it. And so the housing developers, the root addition doesn't have that. And so they gave it to the county, and the county says, okay, we will collect the fees, we will do the maintenance, we will do all the upkeep, and it's kind of theirs. And that's what they do. They check it throughout the year, and I think they have daily maintenance on it all the time. And so the county owns it, which means they're responsible for it, which is why they paid for the other ones out of the ARPA money. And because it's their responsibility, even though they're not charging, I don't feel like those houses got a free sewer system. Reed Road and out at, there's two of them. So they got $350,000 of brand new packaged sewer plant because it's county owned that wasn't really assessed to the homes. They're still just paying their $30, $40 a month in their sewers. So I don't know. So that's a little bit of what I know. Like I said, we don't have sewer enterprise funds for the county. The package plants do have a sewer fund, but it only is for small maintenance, only $30,000 a year. And so I'm not sure. It's going to come down to how Luke and the commissioners decide that they want to charge people. And honestly, they can decide not to charge people, especially if they get the high principal forgiveness, or they get a loan and they could just pay it out of the general fund and just call it good. So, I mean, it happens more than you think when you start looking at some of these old contracts and you go, hey, they're not actually paying their fair share. Well, that's how the contract was made back in the day. So very important. I hope this helps. Sorry, it's kind of long, but like I said, there's probably more information, but that's what I know as of right now. All right, thanks.